Great talk from Robbie. Our next speaker, I'd expect nothing less from Chris, one of my favorites to listen to laugh at, and to articulate the program of recovery in a way that I always can just listen to him forever. And so with that, we will get him up here. Let's welcome Chris up here.
Hi everybody. My name's Chris. I'm an alcoholic. It's great to be at this group. This group is such an enthusiastic group. You know, when you come out here, you really see AA going on, and Andrea and I really like coming out here. You know, I came straight here from a service for my sister. My sister passed away a couple of weeks ago. And we had the service for her in our old hometown. I got to meet some family I hadn't met before, and you know what I want to share with you is this. I didn't make it about me. I didn't, you know, back in the day, if somebody would die, I would think, God damn it, they died on me. You know, now I'm going to have to get dressed up in a suit and go to a wake. I don't like wakes. You know, I used to make things like that about me. And instead I really tried to bring a good attitude to this whole thing. Listen, it's a somber, sad event, right? But just try to bring something positive to it, you know, and then we drove out here, and I knew that I was going to be in good hands with all of you. Now, I am an alcoholic. I know what alcoholism is today. When I was dying from it, I didn't really realize what was going on. I knew I drank too much. You know, the milkman knew I drank too much. But if you would have asked me, like, no, really, what's your problem? I would say, oh man, it's complicated. You know, I'm a complicated guy. You know what I mean? Let me tell you about me. I perceive the injustice in the world at a level most people don't even get close to. And I suffer from because I'm so sensitive about the injustice. And that's, you know, I'd come up with some crazy reason like that. If you ask me what was really wrong with me, what was really wrong with me was I had alcoholism. And I didn't know that. And it's a shame. Nine alcoholics out of 10 die from alcoholism. You know, some lucky people like us find a path into recovery, and we can die with alcoholism and not from it. You know, and I'm grateful to be up here. I also, 2 days ago, I celebrated 33 years of continuous sobriety, which is, thank you. There's some people that lost some money on that one. I gotta tell you, because I was not a vision for you when I showed up in Alcoholics Anonymous. I was the guy that you'd be afraid to go near. You know, I was always mad and resentful and critical and sarcastic, and it just you know, you find a way to heal in here. Now I drank for about 19 years, and I drank because alcohol did something for me. And alcohol did something for me that I needed. And why I needed it is because I had alcoholism. I hope you understand what I'm going to say, but I believe alcoholism is a toxic experience of self-consciousness. And I want to try to explain a little bit about what I mean by that. Now, from my earliest memories, I can remember being really uncomfortable with myself, uncomfortable with my environment. I had a lot of anxiety around crowds. There's a million things I didn't feel like I wanted to do. And really, what that was it was an overwhelming experience of self-consciousness. I'm always thinking about how something's going to affect me, or that person's looking at me funny, or I'm going to look stupid. And all of this was on me. And then one day, me and a couple of my friends decided we were going to get drunk. We'd heard about this, from the older kids, and we thought it was going to be cool. So we're about 13, and we cut school and we go back to my house, and I grab a bottle of whiskey and I pour out 3 glasses, and we get to work on getting drunk. This is going to really be cool. And what happened with the 2 other guys is alcohol didn't do for them what it did for me. What it did for them, I have no clue, but I do know that they didn't finish their glass of whiskey, and I drank mine, the rest of theirs, and as much of the bottle as I could. And I know what the reason was. The reason was this alcohol, what it did was it took away that toxic experience of self-consciousness. It took away the self-centered fear. It took away the anxiety. All of a sudden, I started to feel larger than life. All of a sudden, I started to say, this is so great. This is so cool. You guys, we're going to do this every day. This is so cool. And they were just looking at me like I was insane. Now, alcohol did for me what it didn't do for these other 2 guys. And from that moment, it cemented into my mind that there's an anti-anxiety potion that I can use to feel like I think all of you feel normally. There's something wrong with me. And so I started to become preoccupied with alcohol. Now I'm 13 years old. It was problematic because the drinking age was 21, but, it's problematic, but not insurmountable for people like us. We figure out a way. And I knew that I wasn't going to drink this whiskey again because I had a hangover. I went into a blackout, and I had a hangover that was just crippling. And, I knew that there was that stuff I reacted poorly to that. But I knew that I was going to use alcohol. Like the whole time, I'm lying flat on my back, sick as a dog. I'm thinking, man, when can I do this again? And I know that that's not the reaction that the other 2 guys had. So I became preoccupied with alcohol. When you're 13, you start looking around at the alcohol. You see the other 13-year-olds drinking. And there was a marvelous company that had a fine line of products called Boone's Farm. And so I started to drink a lot of Boone's Farm apple wine and Strawberry Hill. I started to go after the Southern Comfort and the Blackberry Brandy, and the things that 13-year-olds drink, and when you become a full-blown alcoholic, you stay the hell away from. And slowly, as the years go by, listen, from the get-go, I had what you would describe, if you're an alcoholic, as the phenomenon of craving, the allergy to alcohol. I had it the first time I drank when I was 13. And what that means is, when I start drinking, if alcohol remains available and I can continue to drink it, I will. That's what the phenomenon of craving is. It's the first drink asks for the second. Second insists on the third. The third demands the fourth. I want the 28th drink more than I wanted the 27th. And that's always the way I reacted to alcohol. And that'll get you in trouble. You'll get a lot of DUIs. You'll embarrass the hell out of yourself. You'll do things that you're horrified about the next day if you drink like that. And so I tried many, many ways early on to manage that. I'm like 15 and I'm trying to manage my alcoholism with pot. I'm trying to manage it with speed. I'm trying to manage it by drinking beer. You know, how drunk can you get on beer? You can get pretty drunk on beer if you drink enough of them, and I certainly would. You know, so I'm trying to manage it. I don't want to go into a blackout and pass out at 7:30 at night on Saturday. You know, so I'm trying to manage this stuff, and it's tough for me. But you know, sometimes I figure it out, and sometimes it gets away from me. And over any considerable period of time, alcoholism gets worse. It does not get better. So what that looked like with me was, over any considerable period of time, I was putting more alcohol in my body, and things started to get really problematic. You know, I started to pay a lot of prices for my drinking, prices I didn't recognize were really the cost of my drinking. My driver's license, you know, I lost that a bunch of times with DUIs. I lost a family, you know, I lost a million jobs. I lost the respect and friendship of practically every one of my friends. And this was happening kind of slowly and imperceptibly, and I wouldn't really point it toward alcohol. It was something else. You know what I mean? Like my first DUI, I'll never drink 13 beers and smoke 5 joints again. That was what the problem was those joints. Because I got to tell you, I thought I was a great drunken driver. I really did. And to this day, I think I was. I just wasn't a very good passing out behind the wheel driver. And that's how I got every DUI, and that's how I crashed every car. I would pass out while I was driving, which, you know, it's not a recommended way of going down the road. So over the course of time, my alcoholism is getting worse. It's getting really bad. If you're an alcoholic, you know what I'm talking about. You know, it's just each day gets a little darker. Your life gets a little smaller. It becomes a little bit more pathetic. And I drank for about 19 years. I tried to get sober a couple of times. Now, the second part of the first step that I understand is the obsession of the mind. And this was really hard for me to understand. I was in Alcoholics Anonymous quite a while before I could really gain access to a full concession of what that was and what that meant. But I could explain it to you easily. I would come to in the morning, you know, wearing the clothes I had passed out in the night before, just ill. I was drinking so much alcohol that I didn't have a hangover. I was suffering from alcohol poisoning. Like I was about 135 pounds soaking wet. You drink a quart of vodka or a quart of whiskey on a work night, and you get up at 7 in the morning, you know, that's not a hangover. You've put so much alcohol in your body that your body is trying to reject you. You know, you've poisoned your body. So I would come to in the morning and I would swear to God, I'm never going to drink again. Right? I'm never going to drink again. And here's the thing. If you would have hooked me up to a lie detector and you would ask me, Chris, are you ever going to drink again? No, I'm done this time. The needle would go to true. Because I was telling you the truth. I was never going to drink again. And then I'd go off to my terrible job driving my $100 car. And somewhere around noon, I'd get half a sandwich down. I'd get rehydrated. And now it's like 3 o'clock and quitting time is 4:30. And I'd start to think about that decision that I made in the morning. That decision to quit drinking, you know, for good. And I'd start to reassess. I'd start to think, you know, that might be an overreaction, you know, to quit drinking forever. You know, I might have to modify that decision on the way home from work. And on the way home from work, I would stop at the liquor store. And I would start the whole cycle over again. And I would think I changed my mind. That's how tricky alcoholism is. That's how tricky the obsession of the mind is. I want to tell you that, yeah, I quit drinking this morning, but I changed my mind. But when you think about it, they talk about in the book Alcoholics Anonymous that that's a subtle form of insanity. It's a strange mental blank spot that precedes the first strain. We are without defense against the first strain. And today I see what that was. That was the obsession of the mind. That's what makes me powerless over alcohol. If I'm powerless over alcohol, then I have to be admitting I have nothing to say about whether it goes back in my body. If I'm powerless, right? So I understand that today, but it took a while in recovery for me to become exposed to that. Now, December 28th, 1989 is when I showed up here. And I want to tell you the story, because it's that time of year. I want to tell you the story of December 28th, 1989. All right, at this period of time, I was an electrician, which is not a great trade to be in when you shake a lot, you know. I was forever blowing myself up, you know, electrocuting myself or someone next to me, you know. They hate that, especially if they're a plumber. So I'm at this, I'm working for this electrical contractor, and he's having a Christmas party. And the Christmas party is at this beautiful building that we're in the midst of wiring, and everybody's there. There's all kinds of booze, and I get drunker than a hoot owl because that's just what I do. And I remember my boss being disgusted with me. I was just pathetically drunk, and he turns to this guy and he goes, "Take him home. Take him home right now." And the guy that took me home got a DUI that night, I mean, that's how bad I was. So what happened was, this was Christmas at my mother's. I'm living with my mother now because that's what happens to you. When you just can't put anything together, like bank accounts or apartments, or I can't put any of that stuff together. So I'm ending up at my mother's house. Now I end up back home, and I go into a blackout. Now in this blackout, I found out what happened later, but basically in this blackout, my whole family comes home. I got my brother, my sister, who just passed, nieces and nephews and cats. And all kinds of, and it's Christmas time, right? So my brother would be playing, really very poorly, be playing Christmas carols on the piano, and my sister's like wrapping presents to put under the tree, and the stockings are hung by the chimney with care. And I go into a rage, because somebody said something. You know how they are? You know how they say something, right, Ron? They just, what did you say? And I go into an absolute rage. I'm becoming more and more violent as the years go by, and I threaten my entire family with a .38 caliber handgun. I'm going to kill all of you, every one of you. I'm going to kill you all. And they knew I'd feel terrible the next day about the whole thing. But they knew they better get the hell out of the house. So that's what they did. They got the hell out of their house. It wasn't the festive mood they were looking for. And a couple more days go by where I'm just in a drunken blackout. And finally I come to, and I don't know what day it is. I look at the clock. I don't know whether it's 6 o'clock in the morning or 6 o'clock at night. It's all this gray, and I stagger into the kitchen because I need to put my head under the faucet because I'm dehydrated, and I need to get like a gallon of water down because I'm about to die of dehydration, and there's a pile of vodka bottles in the sink this high that I don't remember buying. I don't know where they came from, and I start to go into the delirium tremens. Now, if you've never gone into the delirium tremens, I can describe them like this. Take terror, take hallucinations, and take convulsions, and stick them all together in a blender and then push 10. You know, that's what the delirium tremens were like. And I fish flopped for a couple of days, and there was maggots all over me, and there was little animals running around, and there was marching bands playing outside, and there was big, huge things scratching on the house to get in. And I was freaking out, you know, for like 2 days. And finally, I start to regain some kind of sanity. And I remember, you know, Robbie shared that prayer. And this is a very, very common prayer for many of us. And it's a very simple prayer. I basically said, God, help me. I can't live like this anymore. Either kill me or heal me. Yeah, I can't live like this anymore. And when I regained enough sanity to be able to leave the house, I knew in my heart that I needed to go to Alcoholics Anonymous. I'd been to Alcoholics Anonymous, right? I'd been to treatment a number of times, IOP. None of that stuff ever seemed to last. But something inside me said, you know, my only hope is going to be Alcoholics Anonymous. I wasn't sure it was going to work, but I couldn't be that guy. I found out what I had done, and I couldn't be that guy. I couldn't be the guy coming to in a jail cell with the guard saying, "Kid, you know what you did last night? You know, you killed your whole family." You know, I couldn't be that guy. So desperation, you know, made me willing. And I remember I hadn't slept in 4 or 5 days because, you know, when you're going through the DTs, you know, you're just completely insane. There's no sleep. As soon as I possibly could leave the house, I found a meeting book. And now the car I had was a 1976 Ford Granada that I had bought from one of the guys that I worked with. And it had white walls. And this was a Quaalude car, right? This thing had no clutch. It had no emergency brake. It didn't have a heater. You know, it had no muffler. It was just a piece of crap. And I knew that if I was going to go to a meeting, I'd have to find a flat one. Because there was no clutch, it wouldn't go up hills. So I found a flat meeting in the book. And it was in Morristown, New Jersey. It was all highway. And I headed off to that meeting, just completely insane and out of my mind. And you know, I remember pulling up, and here's the church, and there's a tiny little incline before you get into the parking lot. And I remember I pulled up, and everybody's standing. They're all standing on the. They're standing outside, like all having cigarettes on the porch. And for me to get up that tiny little incline, I've got to floor this thing, right? And it's got no muffler, so I go, whoa! You know, going like 1 mile an hour up this little hill. And I remember everybody's like looking at me, like, must be a new guy, you know? And I had to park the car against a tree because it wasn't a flat parking lot, and there was no emergency breaker. You know, it would have rolled away on me, no clutch. And I walk into the meeting. And you got to understand, you want to talk about toxic self-consciousness? You know, look at somebody who's detoxing. And I go in and I sit down, and it's all I can do to go into this room and sit down in this meeting. And I get there just a little late, and the meeting's already starting. And I sit down, and I'm like, oh God, I'm sitting down, I made it, I'm sitting down. And then this lady like starts tapping me on the shoulder, you know, sitting next to me. I go, what? And she hands me a 12 and 12 Steps and 12 Traditions, and she goes, we're reading from page 87. And she hands me this book, and I grab the book, and I look, and they're reading a paragraph each, and they're coming down the row at me. And I freak out. I get up and I go outside. I'm like, oh my God, they make you read. And I'm standing out on the porch and I'm having a cigarette. And this guy saw me leave. I'll never forget. This guy Jorge saw me leave, and he came out. And he comes up to me and he goes, hey, hi, my name's Jorge. Yeah, what's your deal? And I'm like, oh, God, coming back to relapse. Oh my God, there's demons, handguns, blood, vomit, blood, you got horrible. And he goes, okay, why don't you come on back in the meeting? and I'm like, meeting, there's a meeting tomorrow. I think I'm going to go to the meeting tomorrow. And he no, come on back in. He starts yanking on me, and he ends up dragging me into the meeting. And now the meeting's like full blown, and there's only 2 seats next to each other left, and they're up in the second row. And we sit down, and I sit down like, oh, okay, maybe he'll leave me alone now. I'm sitting in the meeting. I'm not gonna have to read. And he taps me, and he goes, raise your hand and tell everybody you're coming back. I'm like, what? He goes, raise your hand and tell everybody you're coming back. And I'm like, well, there's a meeting tomorrow. And it's a because and everybody raises their hand. Everybody's coming back tomorrow. And he's like, raise your hand. He starts getting loud. And people are starting to stare at us now because he's getting loud. And I'm like, oh my God, they're looking at me. They're going to be thinking at me next. So like I panic. And I've never seen this happen before, never seen it happen after. But right in the middle of this woman's sharing. Share. I stick my hand up right in the middle of her sharing. And the chairperson and the person sitting next to her, they're really confused. They don't know how to handle this. This is unusual, right? But I think they did the right thing. They shut the woman up that was sharing, and still like this, pointing at me, and they call on me, and I said something incredibly profound, like, it's Chris, I'm coming back and realize it's terrible, stuff's scratching, blood, I threaten everybody's like, I'm fine, I'm sick like crazy, thank you. And it's dead quiet, right? And then all of a sudden, the whole place erupts in a giant cheer. They're going, yeah! Like this. I'm like, oh my God. I took it as acceptance at that point in time. I now know what it really was. It was, oh my God, did you hear that guy share? Oh, that pathetic bastard. I came in here tonight with problems of my own. I'm going to be skipping home, yay! So being able to do that, being able to raise my hand and say I'm coming back, there was a wall of self-centered fear that was blocking me off from being able to be with you. It was just too uncomfortable for me to be in the meetings. It was too uncomfortable for me to talk to you. The lights were too bright, I didn't want to do it. And I was able to get past that, and I was able to start coming to meetings after that night. And I'm very grateful. That was New Year's Eve, 1989, when I walked into that first meeting. So that's 33 years ago, and I'm incredibly grateful for the last 33 years. Now I start going to Alcoholics Anonymous, and I'm a mess. I'm really a mess. I get a sponsor the next day, and he told me to do one thing. He said, Chris, I want to see you at a meeting every single night until I tell you to stop. And AA was different. Like today it's very, very orthodox for people to, if you get a sponsor or a spiritual advisor, for those particular people to offer you a presentation of the 12 steps, to help you understand what the steps are and help you move through them. But back in 1989, that AA was different. It was more about meeting attendance. Meeting makers make it. We want to see you at the meetings. Become a coffee maker if you want to recover. I mean, it really was like that. And that would be okay. But my problem was, I had a real problem. I was really alcoholic. I was very, very clearly end-stage alcoholism. I wouldn't have lasted much longer if I continued to drink. The velocity of my drinking was like this. I would go to the liquor store, I'd buy a bottle. I'd get home. I would be drunk in an hour. I'd be in a blackout in 2 hours, and I'd be unconscious in 3. That's how I drank. That's the velocity of my drinking. And I just had a tough case of alcoholism. And coupled with that is that experience of toxic self-consciousness. So I was incredibly uncomfortable. I was going to the meetings. Okay, I was going to a meeting every night. I was doing what my sponsor said. But I was pissed. Listen, this is the kind of guy I was. I'd be sitting in a meeting and I'd be pretending I'm sane, and he would raise his hand. If you go to discussion meetings, you know exactly who I'm talking about. He's going to raise, oh God, he raised his hand. Oh, please, don't call on him. Oh, he's such a blowhard. They called on him. Oh, now he's going to sit there and tell us all about his family. Oh, who cares? Hey, buddy, tell somebody who cares, Oh, he's grateful now. Oh, that warms the cockles of my heart that he's grateful. I think I'll go outside and slash all 4 of his tires. And then what I'll do is I'll follow him outside when the meeting's over to see how that gratitude holds up. Oh, thank God, finally he shut up. Now, these are the voices in my head. But I'm sitting here like this. Thanks for sharing. Because I can't tell you how crazy I am. You'll throw a net over me. You'll have me gassed. You know what I mean? I can't do it. So that's what's going on. I'm sober, but I am so disturbed. And I'd made friends with this one guy. This one guy was a beaut. Radio Shack Mike. I'm still in touch with him today, but he didn't last long in Alcoholics Anonymous. But Radio Shack Mike was pious, very pious. In other words, whatever book he was reading at that period of time, that was the answer. He was very, very pious. One day he would say, Chris, do you have a pyramid over your bed? Oh, I put a pyramid over my bed. My life has changed. The next week it'd be, Chris, do you have crystals? Do you use crystals? Oh, man, crystal, you wouldn't believe. I'm going to get you some crystals. So you probably have to get you the strong ones. But I'm going to get you some crystals. Chris, do you do affirmations? I'm going to give you a book of affirmations. Now, here's the thing. Radio Shack Mike showed up in Alcoholics Anonymous, and he got better like that. You want to know why he got better like that? Because he'd been busted with an 8-ball. And his lawyer said you should go to AA. And you should get all the letters from everybody, before you go see the judge, and you should go to treatment. So he never drank. So he shows up. Now, I don't know any of this. He shows up in Alcoholics Anonymous, and 5 minutes later, he's happy. And I want to kill people. I do. I want to kill all of you. And I just don't know what the hell is going on. And he got better really quick because he wasn't sick to begin with. And I don't know that. I don't know that he was there because he got busted with an 8-ball, and he's not an alcoholic, he's not a drug addict, he's just, and he's responding to all this spiritual stuff really quickly. I don't know that. I'm just wondering why I'm so messed up. But this is what he did for me, and it was, I'm sure, unintended. But he would go to the New Age bookstores, and he'd get, whatever. And this one day, he came to me and he handed me a set of tapes. They were 8 90-minute cassette tapes. And he said, Chris, I listened to these and they weren't all that great, but you might like them. You might like them. And I think you'll respond to them. And I go, well, what are they? And he goes, well, it's a big book study. I go, big book? Yeah, he goes, Alcoholics Anonymous. I go, the book that they give you in treatment that everybody signs? He goes, yeah. I go, the book that was written in 1939? He goes, yeah. I go, a big book study? Who does the study? He goes, a couple of guys from Arkansas. I go, Arkansas? But he makes me promise to listen to these. And I'm thinking, oh my God, this is going to be bad. And so I start sticking these tapes in my car. I got a half an hour ride to work at this time. I get a sober job. And I start to listen to the late, great Joe and Charlie. This is like late 1990, early 1991. And the message I start to hear from them is this. Chris, if you don't have a program, you're not going to stay sober. The time and the place is going to come. You're going to relapse. And when if you're not working the 12 steps as they're laid out in the book Alcoholics Anonymous, you don't have a program, because that's what a program is. So when you drink, please don't tell everybody out there that you tried AA and AA didn't work, because AA is a 12-step program. So, and if you're not doing the steps, you don't have a program. You might be fellowshipping, which is all good and well, but you have no program. Now you got to understand, it's 1990. If Joe and Charlie are right, every single person in every AA meeting I'm going to is wrong, including my sponsor, because no one is talking about a program of recovery. So how am I gonna internalize that? So I didn't, right? I shoved the tapes aside. Maybe that's how they do it in Arkansas, but damn it, in New Jersey we share, And but I listened to the whole thing, right? And the whole thing started to haunt me. And then I hit what you would describe as a sober bottom, a jumping off point. There's many ways, second surrender, there's many ways to describe it, but what it was, I'd met up with this young lady, and, we tried to see if two ding-a-lings could make a bell, and that didn't really work. I lost my job, and Florida started to catch up with me by sending me correspondence with fleeing to avoid prosecution in the title. And all this hits in like 1 week, and I just collapse emotionally. I'm not drinking, I'm not doing drugs, but I'm not able to handle this type of emotional pain. And I remember going over to my sponsor's house. I couldn't even talk, knocking on the door. He's like, Chris, what's up? I couldn't even. And what I ended up doing is this. The message in Joe and Charlie really did haunt me. And it's because, they were from Arkansas and they talked really slow. But they talked with experience and they talked with authority. And they talked about a recovery program. And I remember saying, I'm going to try this. I'm going to try this thing called the 12 Steps. And I brought the tapes back out. I blew the dust off of my big book. I hadn't touched it since treatment. And it's funny, like when you go to 28-day treatment, they give you a big book. They don't do anything but give it to you, at least back then. But what you do is you have all your buddies that you're going to be friends with for the rest of your life sign your book on the day you get released, right? That you never see again or ever talk to again. And I remember blowing the dust off of this book and opening it up, and there's all these signatures. And this one, the first one is, Chris, you crazy bastard, you're never going to make it, love Harry. There's all these. So I blow the dust off of this, and I start listening to the tapes. I get a notebook, and I start to go through the 12 steps in a very very, very imperfect way. But I'm giving it a shot, and I don't know if this is going to work. The thing about so much in Alcoholics Anonymous is you have to have faith, and belief is, okay, I believe it's possible that the steps are going to work in my life. Faith is, I'm pretty sure the steps are going to work in my life. And you have to go from belief to faith. And the first time you're doing this stuff, sometimes you're just doing it because your sponsor's telling you to, or you're just doing it because you got no other options. And that's really where I was at. And what happened was, as I started to go through these steps, I see now, looking back on it, my spirit started to heal. I came to you all with a broken spirit. If you let everybody down that's close to you, if you hurt everybody that's close to you, if the people that are closest to you get the brunt of your bad behavior, if you can't show up and you can't keep promises, and you can't stay consistent with anything, and you just can't, you're not available for people, because you're drinking. If you do that long enough, what happens, that damages your spirit. We're not psychopaths. We feel guilt, we feel shame, we feel remorse when we engage in that kind of behavior, when we hurt and let down the people that we hurt and let down. And every little bit of that chips a little bit away of our spirit. And what happened was, as I start to go through these steps, as I start to inventory things, as I start to make amends, as I start to do the self-examination that really is necessary for any movement forward in recovery, my spirit starts to heal. And they call it in the book a spiritual awakening. They say, having had a spiritual awakening. And that really is a good way to describe what happens to us. And I believe the best way I can describe to you what a spiritual awakening was like for me was, I'm awake. I see things as they really are. So I've been restored to sanity. I have a new attitude and a new outlook on life. And I see things as they really are. When I was drunk and when I was drinking, I saw things through the lens of toxic self-awareness, toxic self-consciousness. Everything was always as it directly related to me. And that distorted the lens that I was looking at life with. And so awakening to the spirit is really about seeing things as they really are, about being able to prioritize and understand, what's important and what isn't important. And so that started to happen to me. And I got to tell you, I dug in from that day forward. The cool thing about action, Robbie was so enthusiastic today. And I know where that enthusiasm comes from. He does the work that creates the enthusiasm. And I became enthusiastic about this thing called Alcoholics Anonymous. And if you knew a lot about me, you would see just how significant this was. Because I was an isolator, I was critical, I was sarcastic, I was not a joiner, I didn't believe anything. So for this thing to work for me, I know how transformational it is. So when I say I believe alcoholism is a toxic experience of self-consciousness, the book Alcoholics Anonymous leads us into this understanding. Prior to taking step 3, there's a ton of information in there. Selfishness, self-centeredness, that we think is the root of our troubles. We're an extreme example of self-will run riot, though we usually don't think so. And then there's an amazing statement in there, and it's almost mystical, right? What it says is, self had defeated us. We need to come to terms with this, that self has defeated us. And when I look at that, I tend to believe that I'm self and I'm us, right? But I don't think that's what Bill was talking about. I think Bill was talking about self being a condition, the condition of our illness. The cause and condition of our illness is this thing that he describes as self, and the various forms of manifestations of self that defeat us. What are some of the manifestations of self that defeat us? The number one is resentment. I don't know about anybody else, but I was always pissed. I was mad at my boss. I was mad at my family. I was mad at my neighbors. I was mad at the cops. You know, practically anybody would make my list. Another manifestation of self is fear. And the way they talk about fear in the book Alcoholics Anonymous, it better describes anxiety. Just not being comfortable with myself and my environment. Just not being comfortable with general things in life. So I'll give you, for instance, somebody come over to my house, say, hey, Chris, going to Florida for 2 weeks. Why don't you come with me? Oh, well, I don't know. I can't really break away. What I'm really saying is that's too much of an unknown for me. I know that the liquor store is at the top of the street. I know I can drink in my house. I don't know what's going to happen in Florida, So I'm uncomfortable. So I'm uncomfortable with all kinds of things, and that's fear. That's what Bill is describing as fear. So that's a manifestation of self that's defeating me. I said before that we're sensitive, that we feel guilt, we feel shame, we feel remorse. We're not, the psychopath is the person that doesn't feel any remorse. We feel a lot of remorse, and that's all over me. That's all over me, and that's a manifestation of self. That emotional bondage of self that they talk about in the big book. That's part of my illness, and I must recover from that because it's defeating me. It's killing any quality of life that I have. So I start to. I start to heal in those ways. And today all those manifestations are very much muted. They're not gone. They're just muted to the point where they don't affect my ability to be helpful. God has not rendered me perfect with these 12 steps, and I'm almost glad. Honestly, you ever have a perfect person come over to your house? Make you look bad? Why aren't you more like Harry? He's in law school and he's got a nice girl. The hell with Harry. We don't like people like that. So I haven't been rendered perfect, but I've been rendered very useful. I'm incredibly useful in a number of different ways today, and that, unbelievably enough, is what creates the quality in my life. It doesn't make mathematical sense, but the more helpful I am to people, the better my personal quality of life, and that's all good. Now, I had a drinking history that was really brutal. I'm lucky to have survived it. Many people die of misadventure or alcohol poisoning or overdosing on drugs or whatever. And for whatever reason, I've been able to dodge a lot of those. I was able to dodge a lot of those bullets, and I'm really grateful today. I would say it's more dangerous out there today than it was when I was drinking or using, because of the availability of of substances that are so damn dangerous. I've lost a lot of people in the groups that I've been with. I've lost sponsees. They usually aren't my sponsees when they pass, because they've walked away from us. But I've lost a lot of people that I know. My wife Andrea, she got close to a number of people in AA, and as a non-alcoholic, that's kind of sad. She fell in love with some of us. Fell in love with some. Sometimes the crazier, the more she was attracted to these people, and some of them have died on her, and it's sad. I'm almost used to it. You stay around AA long enough, and you almost get used to it. We lost another one, but it's not normal. We live a very, very dangerous life. So this opportunity for recovery is such a gift. It's such a blessing. To have a progressively fatal illness, alcoholism, and have a recovery process that we can engage in that will bring about a quality of life that didn't even exist before we started drinking is unbelievable. It really is unbelievable. So these 12 steps, what I recommend that if you've not experienced these 12 steps, that you find a sponsor or a spiritual advisor who is going to move you through them. They are drastic. Robbie said they're very drastic, and he's right. And they're not going to be easy. They're not going to be easy to do. They're going to take some persistence. They're going to take some willingness. But this is a perfect recovery process for what we really have. Of course we drank too much. We all knew that, right? And that's what caused so many problems in our life. But underneath that drinking, there's been something damaged about us, something uncomfortable about us, something different about us. And what these 12 steps are designed to do is they're designed to treat that which is wrong with us. I think it's amazing that people in 1939 were able to put together this process of recovery, because I truly do see it as perfect. I think the big problem with the 12 steps today is very few people make it through them. The steps themselves are perfect. But for us to become convinced that it is the answer for us is the tough thing. None of us walked into AA and said, the first time we walked in, we said, oh, step 1, step 2, step 3, that ought to do it. None of us said that, right? Oh, that'll work. So somehow we need to become at least willing enough to do these steps for the recovery process to happen. But I've never seen anybody who gets through the steps, who does a really good job with the steps, stays current in 10, 11, and 12, stays close to the meetings, and finds ways to be of service. You don't see them relapse. You don't. So if we've got a progressively fatal illness where rarely have we seen a person fail who follows the process, yet most of us don't follow the process, what is that? What is that? That's the insanity. That's the reluctance to believe that this really is our answer. I didn't believe it was going to be my answer. But for some reason I got through it and I found out not only was it my answer, it's a perfect answer. It's a perfect answer to alcoholism, these 12 steps. There's been some changes in AA, in my AA and your AA over the last several years. What happened was about, God, it's going to almost be 3 years pretty soon, is all of a sudden this illness started to spread throughout the United States, and practically every Alcoholics Anonymous meeting was shut down. Like, if you would have told me something like that could have happened a year before it did, if you would have said, Chris, in about a year, all the AA meetings are going to be closed down, I would have said, you're absolutely nuts. No way. All of a sudden, COVID hits, and all the places we meet, the churches, everywhere, they shut their doors. Now, here's how resilient we are. If you've been around long enough, if you're really convinced that you're alcoholic, if you got a strong recovery program, you knew you needed to find a way to stay connected, right? So in 5 minutes, half of us are on Zoom, right? We don't know how to run the damn thing. We're upside down. We don't know how to mute. We're taking the thing into the bathroom with us, I mean, we're making every mistake you can, but 12 billion Zoom meetings start. It just shows how resilient we are. Parking lot meetings started. People bringing people over to their basement. Everybody wearing masks. So many of us stuck together. So many of us stuck together. And half of us didn't. Okay? Half of us didn't. Half of us said, I don't really like Zoom. I'm not comfortable with Zoom. All right, there's no meetings, there's no Zoom. I can't tell you how many of those people I've seen relapse. My sponsor, who had 40 years, this is my first sponsor, called me up and said that he relapsed and he's in the emergency room. And he spent like 4 months drinking. He had 40 years. So what I saw was the people that stayed connected, the people that stayed together with this thing called Alcoholics Anonymous. We made it through. We made it through, but we lost half the fellowship. And slowly some of them are coming back. Like we had a beginners meeting that had about 120 people on Monday night. When it opened back up, it had about 12. Where did everybody go? I guess some were still on Zoom, but there are people that found other things to do. And they might have been alcoholic, they might not have been alcoholic. They might have been busted with an 8-ball. But they're not around. Some of them are starting to come back to meetings, and I'll tell you, we're resilient. We're resilient, and it's the people that have recovered from alcoholism, I believe, are the people that are really still sticking around and finding a way to be of service, finding a way to be of service. So what I saw with Zoom was an opportunity to connect with so many of the people I knew around the country. I've gone to a lot of conventions and stuff. I made a lot of friends around the country. And Wednesday night was Austin, Texas. Thursday night was Hamilton, Ontario. Saturday night was Boulder, Colorado. And I really started to enjoy this. I hated it at first, but I really started to enjoy it. But there comes a time when we have to place ourselves in the position where we can be of the most help. And it's time to start getting back to in-person meetings. And if you're sitting here, you believe that like I do. So that's what I've been trying to do. I'm really grateful to be here tonight. I have no idea if I gave the kind of talk Ron wanted me to give, but I gave you the talk that came out of me tonight, and I'm really grateful to be here. Thank you so much.
Let's thank Chris one more time. Thank you, Chris. His talks are always perfect. It's customary for us to form a line and thank him formally. He comes here at his own time and expense. And we're going to spend some time, if you guys want to be of service. It took a lot of work putting this together. We got to fold up some of these tables and start some of this cleanup process for tonight. So we'll take a moment. We'll say, take a moment for silence. We'll say the Lord's Prayer. And if you care to join us, we'll have festive eats and we'll clean up a little bit. And welcome to stay as long as you want. Take a moment of silence. Do with it whatever you like. If you care to join us, we'll end with the Lord's Prayer. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. Thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen. Keep coming back, and thanks everybody for everything.